Hi everybody, welcome back to Major Misconduct. I am the Major, Scott Taylor. That is the Misconduct, Curt Keelback. We are in Winnipeg, Manitoba, live at the Salisbury House on Leela. It is a wonderful place. Come on down, have a load of coffee.
Wonderful, that's not a great word.
We've had a pile of coffee. Lovely and wonderful.
Yeah.
Boy, the coffee.
And perhaps is another one I don't like.
You don't like perhaps?
No, I don't
Actually?
like perhaps.
Actually,
it's okay.
Actually, it's okay?
Yeah.
Actually, the Winnipeg Jets are having a really tough season. They're 26-26-6, which doesn't sound so bad, but in the National Hockey League, a 500 team is not going to make the playoffs anymore, since in Bettman world, everybody gets a point if they can make it through regulation time tied. So regardless of who wins or loses the game, every game's about a 3-point game these days. So the Jets are 26-26-6. They're, as of today, and this being the Thursday before the weekend before Louis Riel Day, and for those of you in different parts of the world, Louis Riel Day is the February holiday here in Manitoba. So, now that we've explained that, the Jets have 24 games remaining this season. They are 6 points out of 8th place, behind the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they are 7 points behind the Florida Panthers in the race for first in the Southeast Division. This is a team that cannot score. As they've said, as years have gone by, this team couldn't score in a women's prison with a handful of pardons. And right now, they have lost. They score goals. They lose 8-5 to Pittsburgh. If they go out and score goals, they
Every once in a while they
hammered.
can't. They lost 9. Or remember
They won 9-8. Philly. They won. They lost 8-5 to Pittsburgh, and then they get back to their normal selves and lose 3-1 at home to the New York Islanders in a game where they get 38 shots on goal. And you would think that everybody on that team had hands of stone.
Okay, here's a couple of things. Number one, it's no disgrace to lose to the New York Islanders. They're one of the most improving hockey clubs in the National Hockey League.
Not at home.
And number
not
two,
at home, there's no excuse.
Number two, they're not that good. The Winnipeg Jets are still the Atlanta Thrashers. They've changed in name, but in essence, they're the Thrashers. What opportunity has management had to change this team? Cheveldayoff, Heisinger, they haven't had a chance to change it. They've had one draft. Nobody's up from the draft yet. Won't be for a couple of years. They haven't made any significant trades. Haven't really had the opportunity.
Okay, there's a question I have.
They were established.
There's a question I have to ask you. Now that we look back, wait a minute.
You didn't let me finish.
No, wait a second. I'm not going to let you finish. I'm not going to let you finish. We're going to go back to the draft. Sean Couturier has played very, very well for the Philadelphia Flyers. He was the guy that everyone projected to be the Jets selection. The Jets chose to select Mark Scheifele, who has been pretty good in junior and was an average player in Canada's national junior team. That still makes you a pretty good hockey player. But the reality is Philadelphia ended up taking Couturier after the Jets took Scheifele. Did the Jets make a mistake at the draft?
Not necessarily. I think it's something you find out over the long term. I mean, a lot of these 18-year-olds aren't ready, but they become pretty darn good hockey players by the time they're 21 or 22. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what they're expecting and what they're hoping from Scheifele. So, no, really, they haven't had an opportunity to put a stamp on things. And these 18-year-olds like Couturier who come up and have an impact, that's a surprise. That is a surprise most of the time, unless you happen to be the first overall pick.
Okay, the Jets haven't had a chance to do anything with this team. I will give you that. But the trade deadline's coming up. The trade deadline is 10 days away, maybe even a week away by the time people start to watch this. What do the Jets need to do? Do they need to make moves at the trade deadline, or is this a team that should stand pat?
Well, take a look at the Edmonton Oilers. Mm-hmm. I think if you've got a situation where you got a team like the Edmonton Oilers, and that's something maybe you want to build to. I mean, the Oilers aren't winning anything, but they're going to. They got Taylor Hall, they got Jordan Eberle,
Ryan
Nugent-Hopkins, and we've seen recently what Gagne has done. That's a team of the future, and maybe you want to give it a little bit of time. I think people in Winnipeg got spoiled by what happened in December. All of a sudden, the team's at home, they win every night. Hey, we're going to win the Stanley Cup! No, you're not. You're the Atlanta Thrashers. You get hot. Every team gets hot. Every team gets cold. Witness the Boston Bruins. Maybe the best team in the league. Right now, they can't beat anybody. And so the situation is you got to be a little bit patient. Now, if something comes up that you can make a deal for, that's good to get a young hockey player that'll be with you long term, but they don't need to make a trade for some guy who's 30 years old.
Okay, so
they're not going to make the playoffs.
My next question is this then. They have 7 unrestricted free agents, and they have more unrestricted free agents coming up next year. Is this a team that should perhaps start to build for not next year even so much, but the year after? Should this team sit down at the trade deadline and say, okay, we've got guys like Oduya, Hainsey who's coming up, Antropov who's coming up a year later. We've got some older hockey players that would be good rental players for teams that are going to run to the Stanley Cup. Do we say, look, we're not going to make the Stanley Cup playoffs this year, we're going to build for the future? Or do we say, look, I think we're good enough, we're going to try to buy ourselves a forward who can score goals and think about making the playoffs this year? That's the question that Cheveldayoff and Heisinger have to answer over the next 10 days.
That's the question they have to answer, and I think that the answer is if you've got older players,
players that you may lose
in your system that you can trade for for futures, for youth. I think right now you got to build for the future. You can't be thinking this year. You can't even be thinking next year so much. You got to be thinking 2 or 3 years down the line. And this is a team that came from Atlanta. They have to have a chance to make their own personnel decisions and bring different people and establish something for the future. And right now the priority is they got to get some goal scorers. And if it happens to be a 19-year-old who might score goals in 3 years, great. Then you've got a couple of them.
Curt Keelback, the wit and wisdom of a hockey genius. We'll be back to talk about basketball, which isn't his game. We're going to talk about Lynn Sanity when we come back on Major Misconduct.